Good afternoon. Time for a bit more talk about Changling. We've now completed the history, both the by-the-book history up to kind of the 1970s, 1980s, and into the beginning of the 90s even, and then my own amended history that I'll be using for my setting after that point. Some of you may or may not have picked up on the fact that a lot of my amended history follows somewhat some structure from a set of books. They're a bit of an eclectic set of books. They mix a degree of fantasy, fae, vampire, werewolf, and other assorted kind of fantasy work into a modern day setting in a very interesting way, but then they also mix in a very heavy element of sex metaplot, which is considered odd by a lot of readers. Some love it, some hate it. I find that it has both positive and negative points. But the books that I'm referring to are by Laurel K. Hamilton, specifically in this case talking about the 15-book series currently about Meredith Gentry. Now she also has another series that focuses more on vampires and werewolves, but this is the one regarding the fairy, the fae. Now, it's not exactly Changeling. It is different in a number of ways, but some of the characters in it and some of the methodologies I find quite interesting and compelling to play with. So I will be using those for some of my modern day interpretation of Changeling. It also throws it around a bit so that anyone who is very familiar with the Changeling metaplot, not that anyone in my group is, but anyone who was very up on the metaplot, it changes it up. It makes it a little bit less predictable. So that's where we are. And now that I've kind of covered off that from the previous videos, today's video we are going to talk about Fae Seemings. Now the Seemings of the Fae are the reflection of the mind of the Fae creature that is half of the Changeling entity. So this is a reflection of the Fae spirit and how that spirit sees the world. That's important to remember because it doesn't always line up with the physical human side of the Changeling. Now, when I say that, what I'm trying to get across is that the Fae life cycle is to go from childling to wilder to grump. But a changeling, being a fae, being an eternal, immortal being, is not bound to a linear progression. A fae could start out as a childling, wide-eyed and excited and wowed by the amazingness of the world and wanting to just see everything and know everything and positive about everything. And that fae can then mature into a wilder who is more experienced, more knowledgeable of the world. Their travels have shown them the way to do things, have shown them how to be successful, how to survive, how to endure. And then to go from that wilder into a grump, the kind of worn down, having been fighting banality for centuries, perhaps even, this kind of worn down, slightly bitter keeper of knowledge, keeper of the truth. The Fae can follow that cycle, but they're not bound by it. You could have a Fae grump who, in some spark of inspiration, this wellspring of glamour from within ignites and rekindles their love for the world. And that grump could become a wilder, or even a childling again. Now, more and more, the Fae as changelings being ground down by the linear world of humanity, the autumn world, that's happening less and less. It's getting much rarer for the Fae to revert to earlier ages, but it is still very possible. And that's tied to what people will see when they encounter these Fae. It also means that because the Fae is the creature that is in these stages, not the changelings, it means that you could actually have a 19-year-old human guy that, when you look at his Fae self, when you look at his Fae seeming, you could see a bearded, old, gristled grump. They could be a grump Fae who has anchored themselves to a young body. By the same token, you could have a late awakening Fae who is a 60-year-old human man who's a childling. And this could be that kind of image that you see sometimes of the old man who everyone looks at him and says, there's no way he should be out doing that, or there's no way he should be able to do that. But there he is. He's going to go out there and he's going to hike, and he's going to walk the forests, and he's going to explore, and he's going to see new things, because even though everyone says he's too old for it, he's excited by the world. That shows you an old man with a childling Fae. And that can also change throughout the course of the adventure. The human body may go from 21 to 22, but the Fae may go from wilder to grump. You know, their age swings, their seeming changes are not bound by any linear scale. They're bound by their perceptions of the world. So you could have an event take place and it jade your changeling, and their seeming could change. You could reflect their new bitterness or their disappointment in the world with that change from wilder to grump, or that loss of innocence in the change from childling to wilder. So it's an interesting dynamic when you actually stop and consider what it means. I mean, the most basic kind of way to look at it would be to say, oh, well, I'm going to be playing a 25-year-old character because I'm 25, and they're going to be a wilder, because that's kind of the moderate age. You know, they're not young, they're not old, they're just kind of moderate. So I'm going to do that. But when you start playing with combinations, now it always ends up a little bit awkward depending on the group, but it is possible to play a child character. We had a character in the last Changling game that I ran, which in a lot of ways the less said of the game the better, but his concept was actually good. He was basically playing, in effect, a lost boy, drawn from kind of the Peter Pan mythos, a child who never grew up. And, you know, that is something that you can toy with. The idea of either a human body, you know, a young human body with an old spirit, or an old body with a young spirit, or, you know, an old man with a wilder spirit. He's still a fighter. He's going to go out there and he's going to, you know, just give it everything, and he's going to fight those fights because they need to be fought. And he's not going to just sit back and tell other people what to do. He's going to go do it himself. So it's really important to think about how you want to play your character and how the two spirits interact. You know, the fact is, they merge and they become one personality. Yes, that is true. But you have to consider what each element brings to that personality. You know, do you look at it as they have to be the same because they're becoming one? Well, no, they don't. You know, they could be polar opposites that, in merging, create one balanced individual. That could be why the Fey Soul was drawn to this person. I'm going to stop it there. I think that pretty much covers the Seemings, and hopefully I've made some sense of it. There's not that much of a mechanical difference between the three, but it can't be overlooked because it means so much to your character development to realize where the Fae is in their long journey. So, like, subscribe. I will talk to you in the morning and let you know how things have gone with the Monday Night Mage game. And then tomorrow afternoon, we'll probably chat a bit about more Changeling. Later on.